Man, it's hard to ignore the news today.
Yeah.
Val Kilmer, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, April 1st, 2025, he passed, 65 years old. And he just leaves behind, wow, such a list of iconic roles.
Right. Just an incredible filmography.
He wasn't just like an actor who played parts.
Yeah.
It was almost like he became these characters.
Yeah.
And he chose some really interesting ones to sort of embody, I guess, throughout his career. And it's hard not to think about some of those performances and, yeah, just feel a sense of loss, really.
It's a real loss for cinema, really.
Yeah.
When you think about the actors of the last, 30, 40 years, he's definitely one who stands out.
Definitely. And I think for a lot of us listening, there's probably one role, or maybe more than one, that really just sticks out. You know, maybe it's Iceman. Maybe it's Jim Morrison.
Right.
Maybe it's Batman.
Yeah, I mean, all very different.
Well, it's so memorable and so distinct, too.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he was just doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
So this deep dive, we're going to, I think, learn a lot, draw on the things that we know about Val Kilmer. And, yeah, I think it'll just give us a richer appreciation for not just the work,
Right.
but for the artist behind those roles.
Yeah, the man behind the performances, right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, where do we begin with someone like this?
Well, I mean, we always like to go back to the beginning, right? And he was born in 1959 on New Year's Eve, no less,
Oh, wow.
in Los Angeles, California.
Yeah.
So it kind of, you could almost say he was destined in a way to end up in the world of movies.
In that world, yeah.
So much of his early life is not as well documented.
Right.
But what we do know is that his first real introduction to audiences came with this 1984 comedy, Top Secret.
Oh, I remember Top Secret. That was so funny.
It's such a bizarre film. It's hard to even describe.
Very silly.
But even then, you watch that, and there's this charisma,
Right.
a certain presence
Yeah.
that's like, okay, this guy, he's got something.
There's something there. You can see it.
Yeah. But of course, I think for so many people, it was Top Gun in 1986 that really just, boom, changed everything.
Yeah. That was the launch, right? That was like, oh, okay. This is a star.
This is a star. I mean, he plays Tom Iceman Kazansky.
Yes.
And he is the foil to Tom Cruise's Maverick.
Right.
So cool.
The cool, collected, calculating one.
Yes. Everything's so measured.
Yes.
And it really made their dynamic, I think, just so much more intense.
Absolutely. It's a classic kind of pairing, right? You've got the hothead and then you've got the more ice cold one.
Yeah.
Right.
Why do you think that performance connected so deeply?
I think there's a few reasons. First of all, just visually, he's so striking in that film. He got those piercing blue eyes, the smile, and he doesn't overplay anything, He's just got this kind of quiet intensity.
He doesn't need to be the loudest guy in the room.
No. And it's all kind of just under the surface. You feel like, oh, there's a lot going on with this guy.
Yeah.
So I think people were just, really drawn to that mystery, that cool confidence.
And from that cool confidence,
Yeah.
he goes to the Doors in 1991
Right.
and portrays Jim Morrison.
Huge leap. Right. From Iceman to Jim Morrison.
Talk about range.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, to this day, people talk about that performance.
They do.
I mean, what was it about his Morrison that was so believable?
Well, I think part of it was, he really committed to that role.
Yeah.
He immersed himself in Morrison's life. He listened to all his music. He was reading his poetry. I mean, he really wanted to understand.
Get beside the head.
Yeah, who this guy was.
Yeah.
And he sang a lot of the songs in the film himself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't just like an imitation.
Right.
It was a full embodiment.
It was more than just looking like him.
Exactly.
It was capturing something deeper.
Yeah, the essence,
Yeah.
And I think people really responded to that.
Then 1995, he takes on a whole other iconic figure. Batman in Batman Forever.
Yeah, another huge, role to step into.
Huge shoes to fill.
Right.
I mean, how did his performance differ from the actors who played Batman before him?
Well, I think Kilmer's Batman had a kind of a melancholy almost to him.
Interesting.
He really captured that sense of Bruce Wayne struggling with this dual identity, and even though Batman Forever was a more, I guess, kind of a lighter film than some of the other Batman films.
And the Tim Burton ones especially.
Exactly. You could still feel that darkness,
Yeah.
kind of simmering beneath the surface. And, he brought a real physicality to the role too.
Yeah.
He looked the part.
He looked the part. And that same year, 1995, he's also in Heat,
Oh, yeah.
sharing the screen with Al Pacino
Wow.
and Robert De Niro.
Talk about a masterclass, right?
And it's incredible to be on set. What was it about his performance in Heat, which was very much an ensemble,
Right.
that stood out?
Yeah. Well, he plays this kind of a cool, but also, I guess, a little bit volatile character.
Yeah.
You know, he's part of De Niro's crew.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is he manages to hold his own against these giants of acting.
Yes.
You know, he's not intimidated. You can feel his presence.
Right.
It adds to the tension
Yeah.
of that whole film, and especially that incredible heist sequence, you know,
Yeah.
where, you know, everything goes wrong.
Yeah.
He's right in the middle of it,
Yeah.
and you completely believe him.
And then The Saint in 1997,
Oh, yeah.
he plays Simon Templar, master of disguise.
Yeah, the chameleon.
I mean, talk about range again.
Like,
What did that role show us about his abilities?
I think The Saint really showed off his technical skill
Okay.
as an actor.
Yeah.
You know, he had to transform himself physically. He used different accents, different mannerisms, you know,
Yeah.
and he did it seamlessly.
It really was quite something to see.
Yeah, and I think it showed that he was comfortable,
Mm.
you know, playing in different genres.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't afraid to take on a role that was maybe a little bit more, you know, action-oriented or comedic or whatever.
It was nominated for a few awards, throughout his career, the Saturn Awards, the Satellite Awards, but he never really won those big, industry awards.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Does that say more about like the awards themselves or maybe the kinds of roles that he was drawn to?
I think it's probably a combination of things.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes performances in genre films like action or sci-fi, you know, they don't always get the same kind of recognition as, say, a dramatic performance.
Yeah.
And also, awards are subjective, right?
They are.
It's, you know, it's a matter of taste, you know, who the voters are that year, all that kind of stuff.
It's also political too.
Right. So I don't think the lack of major awards takes away from the impact that his performances had
No, not at all.
on audiences and on critics.
Yeah.
He was widely respected.
Definitely. And, his personal life was also something that, people paid attention to. He was in relationships with, some very prominent figures.
Right.
Cher, Cindy Crawford, Angelina Jolie. It's interesting. I mean, I guess it's part of the,
It comes with the territory.
it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
When you're that famous,
Right.
people can be fascinated by your personal life as well as your work.
Yeah, the public persona, you know?
He was married to actress Joanne Whalley. He met her on the set of Willow. They had 2 children, Mercedes and Jack.
Right.
It's always, it's fascinating, I think, when you have these high-profile careers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you balance that with family life?
Yeah. How do you maintain a sense of normalcy?
Yeah. It must be so challenging.
It's got to be tough. I mean, you're traveling, you're working long hours, you're away from home a lot.
You're constantly in the spotlight.
Right. And it's got to be hard on your partner, your kids, everyone.
And he owned this, 6,000-acre ranch in New Mexico.
Wow.
That's huge.
Yeah. That's a lot of space.
And he was really into, hiking, fishing, bison ranching. It just seems so different from,
right.
the whole Hollywood scene.
The world he was in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think that ranch provided for him?
I think it probably gave him a sense of peace,
Okay.
you know, a place to escape,
Yeah.
to be himself,
Yeah.
away from the cameras, away from the pressure. You know, it's interesting because he was also a very devout Christian scientist.
Yeah.
And that belief system, you know, played a big role in his life.
Yeah. How did his faith influence the choices that he made, especially when it came to his health?
Well, I think, you know, Christian Science emphasizes the power of prayer and spiritual healing.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that definitely informed how he approached his health challenges.
Yeah. And in 2014, he was diagnosed with throat cancer.
Right.
And this was a really, obviously a very challenging time,
Yeah, a turning point.
a huge turning point. And initially, the way he talked about it publicly, he used phrases like the suggestion of throat cancer,
Interesting.
which I think reflects his faith.
Yeah, the way he was trying to frame it.
Yeah. And trying to avoid maybe saying the word cancer outright.
Right.
But ultimately, despite his beliefs, he did undergo chemotherapy.
Yeah. Must have been a very difficult decision.
Yeah. It speaks to how serious the situation was.
Yeah.
And it also, shows the complexity of how people navigate their personal beliefs
Right.
with, the realities of
Yeah.
a serious medical condition.
You can't, you can't fault someone for their beliefs, and how they try to deal with something like this.
Yeah. And the treatment, it worked in terms of addressing the cancer,
Right.
but it had a huge impact on his voice.
Yeah.
And, for an actor, that's your instrument.
Look, it's everything.
I mean, it's devastating.
Your voice is how you express yourself, how you bring characters to life.
Wow.
And, throat cancer, the treatments like laryngectomy, they can permanently alter someone's speech.
Yeah. I mean, how do you even begin to come back from that?
Right. It's a huge adjustment.
Yeah.
And it speaks to, his resilience,
Yeah.
that he didn't just give up.
And he did return to the screen. In 2022, Top Gun, Maverick.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Reprising his role as Iceman.
How amazing.
And it was so emotional to see him back,
Yeah.
even with the changes in his voice.
I bet.
It just felt like this full circle moment.
Yeah. A real triumph.
Yeah, it was really something. But sadly, he passed away
Yeah.
April 1st, 2025, age 65.
So young.
And we know now that, his daughter, Mercedes Kilmer, revealed that the cause of death was pneumonia. And his battle with throat cancer, it had left his body weaker.
Right. More susceptible.
And it just, it really resonated, his death, I think, within the industry and with fans all over the world.
Of course.
It was a loss of someone who was so talented.
Yeah.
And who had touched so many lives with his work.
Right. And he really left behind a legacy, didn't he?
Absolutely.
I mean, his ability to just transform himself into all these different characters.
So completely.
It's pretty incredible. And to do it so convincingly.
I mean, he was Iceman.
Right.
He was Jim Morrison.
Yeah.
He was Batman.
And he was so good in all of them.
He was the Saint.
Yeah.
And you believed him every time.
Yeah, that's the key.
There was a truthfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned earlier, there were these stories about him being difficult to work with on set.
Yeah.
Directors like Richard Stanley, John Frankenheimer, they both, have talked about challenges working with him.
It's interesting, right? Because on one hand, you have this incredible talent, his dedication to his craft. But, the film industry it's a high pressure environment.
Yeah.
And sometimes, personalities clash.
Right.
And, there are stories about, actors who are very, very intense and committed to their work, and that can rub people the wrong way.
Yeah.
But it's also worth noting, I think, that there were people who had really positive experiences working with him.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Mira Sorvino, she worked with him on the film At First Sight, and she has spoken very highly of him.
Oh, good.
She said he was professional, a gentleman, and just, an extraordinary actor.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's always a reminder that there's
multiple sides to every story.
Exactly. And, when we look back on his career, I think it's the work that's going to stand the test of time.
Absolutely.
The performances, that cocky grin in Top Gun, the way he brought Jim Morrison to life, the brooding intensity of Batman, it's all still so vivid.
It is. And I think the fact that he, went through what he went through with his health and still came back to acting, it adds another layer to his story. It shows a real strength of character.
It's inspiring in a way.
Yeah, I think so.
Val Kilmer was a singular talent, someone whose work became part of our culture. And his passing, it does feel like the end of an era.
It does.
But his films will continue to be watched.
Absolutely.
And appreciated.
And I think, his legacy is going to live on through that work.
Yeah. It's an incredible body of work.
Yeah. It really is.
We've been reflecting on the extraordinary life and career of Val Kilmer. And what a gift he gave us. A gift of these characters, these moments on screen that just stay with you.
Yeah.
I mean, his talent was so huge. And his resilience in the face of so much adversity was just really inspiring.
It's a good question to think about, how does knowing about an artist's personal struggles or even their reputation shape how we see their work?
Yeah. Does it change how we appreciate the art itself?
Right.
And that's something we want you to consider. As you go back and revisit Val Kilmer's filmography, maybe there are performances that you've forgotten about.
Right.
Or maybe there are ones that you haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
There's always something new to discover, I think, in the work of a truly great artist.
Always.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.